Fisher paradigm things. And so essentially, right, they're all there and they should be correctly formatted. And I did summary. I did a comment on who he is. It probably could be. And then for the very first annotation, I went ahead and wrote up a connection to one of my articles. So this would be the part where instead of a connection to my article, you are trying to make a connection to one of your articles. And then I did that. I just left the space for the other two, right? So I'm like, here's this part, and then this is where you would go ahead and add in some connection to one of your sources, and the same thing with the last one. I would also encourage people to read my annotation, at least because it's trying to give a pretty good summary and explain it in regular language what the narrative paradigm, what each of the articles says about the narrative paradigm, like what it focuses on. So in any event, you are copying and pasting these and putting them alphabetically into your annotated bibliography, and the only thing you need to do for these is write something that connects to one of your articles. And I have a couple of different versions of that, I guess. So there's that. Then there is the discussion board for this week, where you are just giving me one of your annotations, right? Because you're having 5 plus the 3 that I've done, so you're giving me one of them, and copying and pasting it. So I'll probably go over them today. I'll be just looking over, and I can make comments on them, and they'll mostly be useful for the in general. Like I'll say, you want to make sure in general you should do this or add this, or so you can apply that to the other annotations that you have to do for the final document that's due. Okay, so here's the thing I wanted to be working on also. Well, people who are doing this. So I had people last class sign in and then also give me the narratives. Right. So if you haven't done that yet, I think everybody here has, but let's see. I'm just going to go through and try to make comments on those in like the column next to it. To help people make sure they have sort of a clear idea of what the narratives are they're dealing with, which will be useful for next week, basically, for the essay that we work on for next week and the one after. So I'm going over people's traditional narratives and the new narrative and so on, which is great, and people have started to get the idea. So the next step, which you can start thinking about because you're dealing with your sources right now, is you basically are going to end up wanting to find 3 main ideas that you can deal with. So Alex, for you're doing like, right, here's what the traditional narrative was about what a president should be and how they should act, and then you're going to talk about how Trump, using him as an example, and talk about how he's changed the narrative of what a president does or the presidency. So then what you would then want to be able to do is focus on like 3 particular aspects, right? So like the president, is supposed to be all about compromising, and then you have some information about how, because that was the old narrative, and then you can show how he's changing it from like he doesn't think you really need to compromise, and he still sort of gets things done anyway, or whatever. But that would be one main idea, would be compromising. Um, Maybe even like foreign policy could be its own thing, right? So foreign policy, the president should, never talk to enemies and should always worry about what allies think or whatever. That's a traditional one, and then you can compare that. Um, and I actually split foreign policy up into that, like the bad, not talking to enemies, and then also always asking allies. But that could be under one thing. Okay, so that would be my example. Let's see if you're there. Meaning, like, you don't have to do these, but when I talk about three main topics, so a big one would be compromise, and you could talk about how he shifted that. Foreign policy, you could talk about how he shifted that, and the whole concept of the budget and spending money, right? Presidents, I don't know, are supposed to worry about the budget and try to keep things restrained and all that stuff, and he was not very interested in that from the get-go, and he didn't do it, and things were going perfectly fine. So whatever. But you want to find three. Eventually, you want to find three topics. They may not be these three because there's plenty of other three. There's plenty of other things, but I'm just using those as a example, sort of to get the. Yeah. So the question is, we can use additional sources if we find them after the annotated bibliography. Absolutely. So yes, you can. Um, I'm also going to say probably you don't need to then annotate them, right? So here's how it's going. The assignment is you do the annotated bibliography for these 8 sources, 5 and my 3. Then we're going to do the literature review, and you can use those sources and any other ones that you find. But if you find new ones, you don't necessarily need to then go back and annotate them. I mean, I think in official academic paper world, that might be a thing, but we're not going to do that. So you can basically, it's like, okay, here's the assignment, you did the annotations, you get it. Here's the literature review, you're writing it, you're finding more sources. At the very end, you'll need to have a complete bibliography, right? Like here's all the sources in alphabetical order and stuff. But they won't all need to be annotated. So yes, find more sources and use other sources, and then don't worry about annotating those ones, because I'd rather have people, once you've done the annotation essay, that's essentially the skill that task is focusing on, so then you know how to do that. Well, people, one last thing I will mention, okay, so the only thing that's weird about this, or not weird, but for the annotated bibliography for the final document, there's this thing that says, like, at the top of the page, state the topic that your literature review addresses and the main issue or problem at stake, right? And so that would be, in my mind, that's sort of you talking, just stating like the change, right? Because that's sort of the main idea. So you're like, here it is, my topic is whatever, mine is higher education, and the main issue is that examining how higher education has changed over the years, because of differences in technology and beliefs, things like that. So it's not very long, right? It's a couple sentences, that's it. And then you just get right into the rest of the annotation. I just wanted to point that out.